Hi, thanks for joining me today. My name is Lindsay. I'm the designer behind Doing the Most Design, and you can find me on Ravelry at LindsayDTMD. I can't wait to show you what I've got in store for you for today's video. As a reminder, the way that this motif works is that we're doing 4 rounds basically in stockinette, double knit. Then we are doing 16 rounds of the motif, and then we start the motif over and we do 14 rounds of that. Now rounds 15 and 16 are going to be setup rounds for the vertical decreases. So let me explain a little bit before we actually do the vertical decreases and setup rounds, why we have setup rounds for this. In short, no matter what size you're making for the hat, so this is D, 22-inch circumference, this is F, this is 26-inch circumference. No matter what you're doing, the repeat, which is from here to here, is an even number of stitches. And if you notice here that when we get to the vertical decreases, they decrease onto a center point like this. That's because we add a stitch in the setup rounds so that they're an odd number of stitches. So when we start decreasing one on each side, moving up the hat, we are now creating a focal point. In order to accomplish that, I've split up our task of adding new stitches into 2 rounds. But on top of that, we have to start our round over in a new place so that when we start doing the decreases, they're in consistent places throughout. Because these decreases, we have to change the beginning of round after we've done the setup rounds so that this decrease will start more or less in the middle of the motif. And what we'll be doing is that for round 15, we're going to do 1 motif, second motif, totally fine. Third motif, we're going to add a stitch. On round 16, we will add a stitch in the first motif. We'll add a stitch in the second motif, and then we'll knit the third motif until we need to create a new beginning of round marker. I hope that that might help alleviate some understanding, because in the pattern I think it does look pretty clunky, but there's just no way to get around it. There's also no chart in the pattern. It is only written instructions for how to execute
rounds 15 and 16.
So if it is confusing on the page, that's the explanation. That's what we are trying to accomplish if you can look at the forest for the trees. Now, in my last video, I said I was going to see you in a couple of days after I knit this up, but I actually ended up knitting this in 1 day because I have no... Okay, you're welcome. So I'm going to get started here. And again, I'm going to do 2 full motifs just as written. And then when I get to my third motif, I'm going to show you how I am suggesting that we do a make 1 increase for both the front and the back of this work. As you can see here, I have knit up to my final repeat for this new round 15. And at this point, I want to explain what it is that we are trying to accomplish before I start showing you how to knit these increases. So first of all, we are knitting basically the snowflake motif without any disruption. We're going to be knitting that as regular. But then somewhere in here, instead of knitting this entire section in main color on the front, contrast color in the back, I'm going to be splitting it somewhere around here so that I can create a make 1 stitch. I will need to make a stitch on the front side, but because we're also double knitting, I'll have to make a stitch on the back side. Once we get to it and you see it in action, you'll also see that we then have to rearrange the stitches after we've completed that task. So let's get into that right now. I'm going to knit across until I'm needing to create my make 1 stitches, and then I'll show you how we will do that together. I've made my way to the stitch in which I want to do my increase. Now, if this were not double knit, I would probably want to do a lifted increase. But because it is double knit, I don't think that that's going to look great. I think it's going to draw attention. So instead, what we're going to do is a make 1 by knitting into this stitch and then knitting into it 1 more time through the back loop. But in essence, we are doing 2 knit stitches. For the stitch next door to it, this, which is a stitch that we will purl into. We're going to do a very similar thing by purling into the stitch and then purling into it one more time through the back loop so that we are creating 2 purl stitches side by side. Let's take a look to see what that looks like. So here I am knitting into this stitch. I'm not dropping it off of my left hand needle. I'm going to twist my right hand needle into the back. So I'm twisting my right hand needle into the back of that same stitch and then knitting it one more time, just like that. So now I have 2 knit stitches side by side here. I'm going to move my yarns to the front now, and we will do a very similar process for this next purl stitch. So I'm purling through the front as you typically do. And then this one, don't forget, purling through the back loop sucks. We're turning the work over so we can see. We're getting our needle up into the back side of this loop, but the needle is poking out in front of our work. And then I'm purling this stitch as well. I've split my yarn. That's the only thing holding me back here. All right. On this side of my fabric, I should see roughly 2 knit stitches. And on this side of the fabric, I should see roughly 2 knit stitches as well. One of the knit stitches is going to have a bar in front of it, but it's not a purl stitch. Now at this point, we want to make sure that we are maintaining that main color, contrast color, main color, contrast color. So in order to take care of that, we need to move 3 of the stitches back over to our left-hand needle. At this point, you might find it helpful to have a spare knitting needle laying around, or if you have, for example, a cable needle, or you have like me, this little multi-tool, we are going to put one of these stitches on your spare needle and hold it out of the way. We will slip purlwise that first purl stitch. We will put the stitch that we had on our holder back onto the left needle, and then you can move both of those stitches over like this. All right. Then from here, we continue on in our established pattern, which is going to be, our main color is going to be on the outside for the rest of these stitches. So for my next repeat of the motif, I am replacing round 16 with this new information. In short, though, the snowflake motif is not changed, but when we get over here to this stretch at the end of the repeat, we are going to be adding a stitch in a very similar place as we did to last time. I'm now at my final stitch marker, headed in towards my beginning of round marker. For this portion of the motif, instead of doing a make one, we already did that on the last round. What we're going to do is knit to a point where we then are creating a new beginning of round marker spot. So once I've done that, then the next time I work through this beginning of round marker, I can take it off of my needle. And as soon as I've created my next beginning of round marker, I think I can remove my stitch markers as well. I'll have new spots for the stitch markers. Okay, so we're not doing any more make stitches. If that felt really uncomfortable, yay, you only had to do it 3 times. So hopefully not the end of the world. And then I have on standby one more little stitch marker that I will be adding once I get to that point. I'm going to knit to that point, and then we'll kind of carry on from there. I have now knit up to 1 stitch short of where I will place my new beginning of round marker. But I also want to show you that this is what it looks like now in situ for these stitches that we've created. So as you can see here, this is our knit stitch from before. This is the knit stitch that we created. This little bar in front is my signal that I knit this stitch that is on the needle through the back loop. So I've already worked here the front of that stitch, and it was not difficult to knit into. And then I purled into the first purl stitch that is a partner to this purl stitch right here. So I'm going to do one more stitch in the double knit and then place my new beginning of round marker. That stitch will feel a little tight, but you can pull the tension out of it from the stitch that is on the right hand side of it. Here I'm placing my beginning of round marker, and I'm going to take a second to remove my other interlocking markers because I will need to replace them as we move forward through the round. Okay, once I've worked over to this round marker, I'm going to take this off permanently from the rest of the work. And at this stage, we will begin the charts for the decreases. So I'm going to pull up those charts and I'll show you how we can do the vertical decreases and get finished with this hat. Thanks for making it to the end of this video. If you have not done it yet, hit like and subscribe so you can be notified when I put out more content for you. I'd love for you to connect with me on Ravelry at LindsayDTMD. Check out my link tree for a collection of my projects. And if you're able to, leave a cash tip for me at my Ko-Fi page. All links are in the video description below. Don't forget to be kind to yourself as you learn, and thanks for spending your time with me. Bye!